Have you ever noticed how differently you behave when you're part of a group compared to when you're alone? Or wondered why groups often end up dividing into smaller factions? This video will dig into the mystery of how we, as individuals, get influenced when we're part of a group. Think about the last time you were in a group setting. Maybe it was at work, in a meeting. The discussion started, opinions were flying, and you had a unique point of view, but something stopped you from sharing it. You held back, even though you knew you were right. Does that sound familiar? How about another situation? Remember the last family gathering where you just didn't want to disagree with your loud uncle, even though you knew he was wrong? It's these kinds of experiences that highlight the power of group dynamics, and they happen more often than we think. You might think, but that's not me, I always speak my mind. True, maybe you're one of the few who manage to always assert themselves. But even then, there's a good chance you felt the tension of going against the group. This isn't about being weak or strong, it's about understanding the unseen forces at play when we're part of a group. You may also feel like you don't have enough time for this, but knowing how to navigate group dynamics effectively can save you a lot of headaches and time in the future. Just imagine being able to confidently manage these situations instead of feeling trapped or confused. By the end of this video, you will gain insights that will allow you to better understand these group dynamics and use them to your advantage. This is third video in the Group Effect series. In the first video, I explained the downward pull of the group and how to recognize when it's happening to you. In the second video, I explained how groups can influence you and how you can navigate these influences to stay true to your individual self. Let's dive into 4 group dynamics. Number 1. Group culture. When we visit a different country, we notice things that are not like what we're used to. The people speak their own language, and they do things and think in ways that are different from us. This is especially true for countries that have been around for a long time. But even in smaller groups like a company or office, you can notice something similar. It's all about how people in a group connect and get along because of who they are. Think about the group you're in and its culture. Think about its style and the general mood. Is it relaxed and casual, or is it strict, with people afraid to make mistakes? Do the people in the group think they're better than everyone else, or does the group value being like everyone else? Does the group like to be at the front of new ideas, or does it prefer traditional ways? Does information get passed around easily, or do the leaders keep most of the information to themselves? Does the group feel more like a tough competition, or is it more about working together? Are people in the group more focused on their own pride or on doing good work? To figure this out, don't just listen to what the group says about itself, but watch what it does and how it feels. Every group has its own culture and spirit. 2 important things to remember. First, a group often has an idea of what it wants to be like: modern, competitive, stylish, and so on. The group might not actually be like that, but it still tries to be. This idea helps bring the group together. Second, the culture often comes from the people who started the group. If they had a strong personality, they've left their mark on the group, even if the group is very big. But new leaders might find it hard to change the group's culture, even if they want to. For example, the US Department of Defense, which is in the Pentagon, became very tough after World War II. Presidents Kennedy and Johnson wanted to change its culture and keep the US out of the Vietnam War, but the culture was so strong that it changed them instead. In Hollywood, many movie directors have tried to do things their own way, but they've been taken over by a culture that's been around for almost 90 years, where producers control everything. It's important to understand that if a group is big and its culture has been around for a long time, it's more likely to control you than the other way around. One last thing to remember: no matter what a group's culture is like, the longer the group is around and the bigger it gets, the more it will resist change. This happens because people want to hold on to what they've made and keep doing things the way they always have. But this can be bad for a group because it might stop the group from adapting to new things. Number 2. Group rules and codes. Whenever people get together, it's really uncomfortable if there's chaos and no rules. So they create their own ways of behaving and doing things. These aren't written down anywhere, but they're understood by everyone. If you break these rules, you might get into trouble or even lose your job, and you might not even know why. This is how the group keeps things running smoothly without needing someone always watching over them. These unwritten rules can control how people should look, how much they can chat in meetings, how they should behave with their bosses, how hard they should work, and so on. When you're new to a group, it's really important to learn these hidden rules. Look at who's doing well and who's not. This will show you what it takes to be successful. Do you need to do a good job, or is it more about being friendly with the right people? See how hard people work when their bosses aren't watching. You don't want to work so hard or do such a good job that you make others look bad and get yourself fired. Also, every group has people or ideas that you're not allowed to criticize. Think of these as booby traps you should avoid. Sometimes, someone in the group who has a lot of respect makes sure everyone follows these rules. Figure out who this person is and try not to upset them. It's just not worth it. Number 3. The group court. Long ago, our great-great-grandparents were often scared of anyone not from their own group. This fear sometimes turned into dislike. While there might have been a good reason to be afraid, having rivals also helped bring the group closer together. This fits with how our brains like to think in terms of opposites like light and dark, good and bad, us versus them. Even today, in our fancy and advanced world, you can still see this old pattern. Groups often focus on an enemy, real or imagined, to bring everyone closer together. As a famous writer named Anton Chekhov once said, "Nothing brings people together like hating the same thing." Leaders from the beginning of time have used this fear of enemies to gain power. They use the idea of a rival or enemy to make themselves look better or to distract from their own mistakes. They might say the enemy is bad, crazy, not to be trusted, or always ready to fight, making it seem like our group is the total opposite. No group wants to admit they're not perfect, but in the end, feeling part of a group and being against another is more important than the real differences, which are often blown out of proportion. Look at any group you're part of, and you'll likely see some kind of enemy or bad guy to stand against. What's important is being able to step back and see the enemy for what it really is, without any exaggerations. But don't be too open with your doubts, or people might think you're not loyal to the group. Instead, keep your mind open to avoid getting too carried away by group emotions. You can even go one step further by learning from the enemy and using some of their better strategies. Number 4. The group enemy. Imagine being in a large group, like your school. After a while, you'll notice that some of your friends might start hanging out in smaller groups or teams. Why does this happen? Well, people feel happy and special when they are around others who like the same things or have similar ideas. But in a big group, it's hard to find people just like you, and it can be tough to make your ideas heard by everyone. That's why some friends start making smaller groups where they can share ideas and feel important. Over time, these smaller groups might even divide into even tinier groups. Sometimes, a small group becomes so strong that they start thinking more about what's good for them rather than the whole school. They might even try to control others. Some people in charge may take advantage of this, causing more disagreements between these smaller groups to keep themselves in power. This strategy was used by a famous leader named Mao Zedong, but it can cause a lot of problems. The group might spend too much time arguing over small things, and the strong small groups might become so powerful that they can control the leaders. It's better to keep everyone in the school happy and working together, which makes it less likely for smaller groups to cause problems. There's one small group we should keep an eye on, the group of the most powerful or popular kids, also known as the elites. Sometimes they might disagree, but when things get tough, they usually come together to stay on top. These elites often find ways to keep their power and make sure things go their way. They might say that when they do well, the whole school does well. But it's rare to see them give up their power or make real sacrifices. It's usually the others who are not in the elite group who have to make sacrifices. So don't be fooled by what they say, and always try to understand what's really happening. By understanding these group dynamics, you will gain insights that will allow you to better understand group, and you can use them to your advantage.